Do you shoot guns? Do you pick up the shell casings when you're done? Do you clean your gun? Do you reload your own ammunition? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then stick around because I want to tell you something about lead. So I know nobody ever sticks around till the end of the video, so I'm going to cover the important stuff up front. So stay for this if you don't stay for anything else. If you fall into any of those categories I mentioned, you shoot guns, even occasionally, or handle anything that came from a gun, or if you reload, you need to know about lead and lead exposure. It's very important. If you stick around longer, I'll give you more details, but just up front, understand this. If you shoot very sporadically, like only once or twice a year, or if when you shoot outdoors or on a well-ventilated range, you're probably okay. Even if those things are true, it is probably a good idea to get your blood lead levels checked. And I'm sure you're getting a physical regularly because it's important to do that. What will more likely kill you than some bad guy trying to shoot you and kill you, or zombie apocalypse, World War III, Civil War, is health. Your health issues will probably get you before any of those other things do. Not that I don't want you to be prepared for both, but really one of the only ways I know of to at least have a good idea of what your health is doing is to get a regular physical. And when you get a regular physical, ask the doctor to check your blood lead levels. Understand that even if you're somebody who doesn't shoot guns at all, and I'm shocked you're watching this if you're that person, because most of the people watching this are probably shooters, but even if you don't shoot guns or handle guns or own guns, there's probably some amount of lead in your bloodstream right now. The world has byproducts of lead everywhere because of manufacturing. The industrial world has it. We've gotten better about it than we used to be. Back in the past, we put lead in gasoline, it was everywhere. And paint, we've gotten smarter. But understand that there's still some floating around. Lead is measured when it comes to your bloodstream in micrograms per deciliter. You don't really need to know that, but what you're going to end up with is a raw number. Like it might be 3, it might be 5, it might be 10, it could be greater than 10. Understand that the CDC says anything above 10 is bad, and anything above 3.5 for children is bad. There's no amount of lead that is good for you. Like the US recommended daily allowance of lead is 0, right? You'll never see that on any nutritional information. It's bad for you. The World Health Organization, I think, uses higher numbers. OSHA uses higher numbers still. But if you're walking around with the blood lead level that is greater than 10, then it is elevated and it's not particularly good for you. I should mention that this is probably going to be like the least popular video I do. Nobody's going to want to advertise, monetize. I'll get like 3 views. But if one person doesn't know about lead and watches this video, I will consider it a win. So we'll definitely leave it at that. I'll still post this. So most people assume when they're shooting guns that the number one way that lead got into their system is from the bullet. Like somehow the bullet had like lead particles, either it hit the backstop or they got burned off the back of the bullet when it was getting fired down the bore. And while there is certainly lead in a bullet, like unless it is getting compacted into very fine granules and getting spat back at you, then that's not really the number one cause of lead that you're getting. What you typically get is something different, and more on that in a second. But anytime you have shot guns for a little bit or a lot, indoors, outdoors, doesn't matter, wash your hands, wash your face with cool water. They make special soaps that are specifically designed to deal with lead, and those do work. The D-Lead line of products I know works. Based on talking to some people, it has better effect at getting lead off of you or surfaces than other soaps. But any soap is good, so wash your hands and face thoroughly before you do anything else, especially when it comes to eating or drinking. Also, while you're on the range, if you can help it at all, I would not eat and drink water or food or anything, especially if it's closer to the firing range. If you walk away from the firing range, it may be better. Also, anytime you're picking up shell casings, those have lead on them. Anything that has touched the gun, been around the gun, or subject to that area also has lead, including your clothes, I suspect. If you are shooting on an indoor range that is poorly or not ventilated, I don't know that I would stick around. That lack of ventilation is likely going to get you when it comes to lead intake. The number one cause of lead, airborne lead on a shooting range, is from the primers. When the firing pin strikes the primer, one of the byproducts of that ignition is oxides of lead. And oxides of lead are very attracted to moisture. Your digestive tract and your respiratory tract are full of moisture. So that is a bad thing if you're on a poorly ventilated indoor range. If you ever start to taste a sweet taste in the back of your mouth, that is 100% oxides of lead. You're just getting leaded down. It's one of the reasons why back in the day when lead was a part of paint, that kids would eat paint chips, because that lead oxide had a sweet taste to it, and that's why kids would eat paint chips. So if you are tasting that, I would leave. I'd pack my stuff up and I would go. The problem with lead exposure, lead poisoning, it can kill you. But I will tell you that it's much more likely that instead of killing you, it just messes you up really badly. You can start to experience neurological symptoms, and those symptoms can occur at lower levels, much lower than what it would take to kill you. I have heard people say that if you're walking around with a lead level over 30 for an extended period of time, that it's not good. Some symptoms of lead poisoning can be short-term memory loss, tingling in your extremities. For males, inability to get an erection. I hear that's a bummer. Infertility in men and women. There are others. So you can start to experience symptoms that are pretty bad before it ever gets to the point where it will kill you. I heard a very bad horror story about a range officer who was working on a unventilated indoor range and getting heavily leaded down. And now this guy can't remember how to drive home. Like and that seems to have become permanent. So when you start to get a cumulative lead exposure over a long period of time, some of these symptoms can stay with you for a long time, if not forever. So before you ever go into some sort of coma, fall over and die, you can have a real bad day. So it really is important for you to pay attention to this stuff. If you have kids in the house or you're around kids at all, be aware that because their developing systems are much more sensitive to lead, you have to be very careful around them. If you've come off the range, your shoes, your clothes, and yourself, I would clean what you can and leave the rest away from the kids. If you are taking kids shooting, be extra careful to make sure that they don't get exposed to an environment that is unventilated or poorly ventilated. As soon as you guys are done, make sure you clean them up. Take extra precautions. If they're picking up shell casings, make sure they're not touching their mouth with their hands or licking their hands. And shell casings should not be any sort of toy for kids. No matter how well they're cleaned, there's going to be some residual lead on those shell casings, so be aware of that. I know they're pretty, especially once they're cleaned. I've seen people go, oh, my kids like these shell casings. I don't know that I would put them around kids for that very reason. Lastly, if you reload, you are handling components that probably have lead on them, so all the same precautions apply. And if you are tumbling your brass to clean it, I would do that either outdoors or have that tumbler away from any living space in the house. When you go to sift that brass, I would definitely do that outdoors when you're getting the media separated from the brass. A lot of times dust tends to rise up from that, and I guarantee you that dust has some lead in it. I personally have gotten to the point now where when I sift my brass to separate the media from the brass, I wear a respirator because I do not want to get exposed to any additional lead. I think that's really it, guys. I don't want to turn this video into a history of lead, like what we used to do with it versus what we do with it now. If you want, like, there's a probably a ton of information on Wikipedia. You can learn about the ancient Romans, how we used lead in inks, paints, gas, all sorts of different things that we just don't anymore. And there are very good reasons for that. So, like I said, if you want to do more reading, I'll probably throw some links in the description and see if there's anything there that interests you, but I'm not going to go into it any further in this video. If you've enjoyed this video, found it educational, fun, useful, any of those things, guys, I really appreciate any thumbs up, likes, and subscriptions. It helps out a lot. If you thought this video was awful and stupid and worthless, then if nothing else, I thank you for watching this far. I really appreciate your viewership, for lack of a better term. I won't take this any longer, guys, but take care, stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.
Get him, Jay.